Okay, so now that we've got our project all set up, let's go ahead and start actually making it. For us, that will start in our message view controller. This is inside the 2040 Battle extension folder, and as I mentioned before, this acts a little bit like an app delegate. It allows us to interact with the messages application. So we get a few override functions. One of those is the will become active, and this is really the main function that we'll use. Basically, it's called whenever our function becomes active or loads. Once that's called, we want to present the proper view controller, which we'll do in this configure child view controller function, which we'll get to in a second. And then we have the did receive. This is called whenever we receive a message. So maybe if we're waiting on our turn and we receive a message we want to update. The did start sending we'll use to remove our persistent data that we'll use to prevent cheating. Then we have a will transition whenever we switch from compact to expanded or vice versa. We'll also want to call the configure child view controller function. Then to keep things nice and neat, I have an extension of the messages view controller class. This contains 4 functions. The first one is the configure child view controller function. We'll use this to determine which view controller we want to present. Then we have 3 other functions. These 3 functions return their respective view controllers. So the create start game view controller will return the start game view controller, the game view controller will return the game view controller, and the game over will return the game over. Okay, so now let's start adding some logic to the configure child view controller function. First thing we want to do is remove any existing view controllers that we have. To do that, we'll loop through all the child view controllers by saying for child and child view controllers, setting its parent view controller to nil, removing its view from the super view, and finally removing it from the parent view controller. So once we've removed ours, we want to actually create a new one, and we'll create a variable to store which one we're creating. We'll call that variable child view controller. Then to actually determine which one, we'll create a switch statement. We'll switch based off the presentation style. So in the case that it's compact, we know the child view controller equals the start game view controller. And in the case that it's expanded, we know we want the game view controller. We also may potentially want the game over, but we don't have all the information we need to do that yet. So once we've determined which view controller we want to actually add that controller to the parent view controller. So we'll say add child view controller with the child view controller. Set its view equal to the super view, then add that view to the super view. Next, we'll want to add some constraints to actually resize that view. So first we want to set auto resizing mask into constraints equal to false, then pin the left anchor, the right anchor, the top anchor, and the bottom. Finally, we want to tell that child view controller that we moved to the parent view controller of the messages view controller, which in this case is equal to self. So basically what we just did is remove any existing view controllers, determine which one we want to present, and then actually put that view controller on top of the other. That function we'll call in the will become active and the will transition. Now we can build and run this and actually see our start game view controller in the compact and our game view controller in the expanded. So let's go ahead and build and run. Make sure you select the extension and not the base app. I like to use the iPhone 7. You can really use any one that you want. And then you hit this play button. So once our simulator loads up, we should come to a screen that looks like this. Then to access our app, we click this little A right here. And since we did everything correctly, we see our start game view controller embedded inside there. Now when we click this button, it actually doesn't do anything, and that's because we haven't configured it yet, and we'll do that in the next lesson.